Julius Browne is a fighter who gets a lot of conversation about him. He's a friendly, marketable bloke. He's extremely eye-catching, the size of him, the tattoos. He's very active on Twitter. He's constantly interacting with the fans. And I guess most importantly, he's an unbeaten heavyweight prospect, signed with Ricky Hatton. Now, I've heard a number of people who are quite high on Julius Browne as a prospect. Most notably, Dwyer. And, you know, for those of you who don't know, I'm a massive fan of Dwyer's channel. I've seen Dwyer do a few videos on Julius Browne where he goes into quite some length about why he rates this guy as the next big thing. Now, I've ummed and ahed about Julius Browne for quite some period of time. Right now, he fought a chap on Friday night, I believe, called Julius Long. And right now, having just sat through the 9 rounds of that Julius Long fight, I must say I am very, very confident that Julius Browne's O is going to go the second he steps up in competition. And that's a very relevant factor, stepping up in competition, because Julius Browne is 36 years old, and the best person that he's beaten is either Richard Towers or Andre Rudenko, both of whom are solidly average opponents. I mean, don't get me wrong, they're both, you know, respectable guys for someone to be taking out. I'm not saying they're bad names to be had on their resume, but I think it's fair to say that Rudenko and Richard Towers are some way away from being the top of the sport. And for example, a youngster, 20-year-old Hughie Fury, or perhaps he was 19 years old at the time, I felt dealt with Andre Rudenko far more effectively than the 36-year-old Julius Browne. Regardless, last night was a fight against a chap called Julius Long, and the surname there is very apt because Julius Long is 7'1", so he is long by name and long by nature. Julius Long had lost 10 of his last 11 fights. He actually had a losing record when he entered the ring. When he walked to the ring that night, he was 16 wins with 17 losses. So he loses more than he wins. He has lost, as I say, pretty much 10 on the bounce, 10 out of his last 11 to less than notable opposition. He actually got stopped in a couple of rounds, in 2 rounds, by Audley Harrison back in 2002. Julius Long himself has to be very much in the autumn of his career. He's 38 years old. And perhaps most importantly, Julius Long was an extremely late notice opponent, being brought in very, very late doors. So all in all, you wouldn't expect Julius Long to cause a guy like Julius Browne, a prospect with so much drive and chat behind him, you wouldn't expect a guy like Julius Long to cause Julius Browne any problems at all. But on the contrary, Julius Browne, I think it's fair to say, pretty much went life and death with Julius Long, and could well have lost the fight. Now, the Browne camp, the people around him, his supporters on Twitter, have got a number of things that they want to blame the performance on. One of them was an injured thumb, which Julius Browne supposedly hurt in the first round. And he did post a photo on Twitter. It did look very swollen. I'm sure it was very sore. Secondly, and perhaps even more relevant than the hurt thumb, was the inactivity. And a lot of people are very much against Ricky Hatton, the promoter, for saying that he's ruined Lucas's career, he's kept him so inactive, he hasn't been able to give him the opposition required. Now, I'm sure both of those things are contributing factors. Clearly carrying an injury, clearly not getting enough fights are very relevant factors. So I don't dispute that. Having said that, the gap in class between a guy like Julius Browne, who is campaigning to get world title shots, and I believe is mandatory to fight Ruslan Chagayev for the WBA regular world title next time out. I mean, the gulf in class between someone like that and a fighter with a losing record, who's lost 10 on the bounce, who got KO'd by Audley in 2, you know, the gulf in class should be so vast. I mean, for me, Julius Browne isn't in my top 20 heavyweights, but he probably is top 30. Let's say we took another fighter from that top 30 bracket. Anthony Joshua. David Price. Derek Chisora. You know, someone who fights at that sort of level. Yeah, I just see those guys walking through Julius Long in one round. And I thought what was most stark about this performance was Lucas Browne's utter lack of boxing fundamentals and boxing technique. Now, this was highlighted to me by the fact that Julius Long was doing certain things far better than Lucas Browne. I mean, Julius Long was at times keeping Browne outside. You know, Long's looked like he didn't carry any power whatsoever, but his jab was, when he threw it, and he was quite low activity, obviously he was unfit, he hadn't been training, he was a short notice opponent, but the jab from Julius Long was catching Lucas Browne. Lucas Browne's footwork, Lucas Browne's foot speed was horrific. Horrific. You know, it looked like a 50-year-old man who hadn't been in the gym for 10 years. I mean, Lucas Browne looked as unathletic as you can possibly do. He made a guy like Browne look like Usain Bolt in there. And I've always said Lucas Browne, for me, falls into the what I class as an educated bouncer, which may be, you know, dismissive, which may be rude of me. But what's in his performance last night, you know, the way he fought was really, really poor. And there was no jab, there was no real sort of direction and tactics in terms of his movement. It was just trudging forward, very slow, eating a jab. And this Julius Long, you know, he's obviously a veteran, he's an experienced journeyman type fighter. His hands were low, but he had some sort of defensive capability, you know. When he was up against the ropes, because he was such a tall opponent, he'd kind of lean back, he'd kind of bring the shoulder up and lean back. And Browne was just literally swinging in, leading with hooks, you know, wouldn't jab in. And every so often, Long came live and he'd kind of lean back and then counterpunch. And he was actually counterpunching Lucas Browne, you know, very, very effectively. At times, he was able to create a distance between the two men. He was able to get a gap to get his jab going. And, you know, there were times, maybe in the first half of this fight, where Julius Long, you could say he was taking rounds of Lucas Browne. I don't think that's an exaggeration. Yeah, and he was taking rounds of Lucas Browne by outboxing him, most worryingly. Now, Long got very tired towards the end of the fight. You know, he himself was out of shape. He himself was old. He himself, well, he hadn't had a training camp, unlike Lucas Browne. And, as I say, Long started to get very, very tired. But again, what was fascinating for me is Lucas Browne. He's known as this absolutely massive puncher. To me, the punching power wasn't exciting. It wasn't anything that I haven't seen in, you know, 50 other active heavyweights. I mean, this Julius Long in the 8th, 9th round, he was taking heavy leather. I mean, there was times when Browne did start to break through towards the end of the fight, where he was catching Julius Long all over the place. But yeah, you know, Julius Long was dropped, could get back up. He was, you know, he's taking punches on the chin. You know, for me, Browne looked like a low level operator. I acknowledge if he hadn't hurt his thumb and if he'd been active, he'd have put in an improved performance. I acknowledge that. But in order to go anywhere in this sport, it's not just putting in an improved performance against Julius Long. We need to deal with some of the fundamental issues. Sorry, there seems to be a gang of Hell's Angels going around that side. But yeah, some of the bigger issues are the fact that, you know, Lucas Browne is in his mid to late 30s now. I believe he's 36, turning 37. He's clearly not keeping in shape in between fights. You know, it's really affecting him. As a man who's getting older, who's getting out of shape, you can see the sort of lack of speed, the lack of movement, the lack of snap in his punches. And he's quite hittable. He's quite easy to outbox. You know, I was looking at Julius Long, who, you know, such a tall opponent using boxing. And I got myself thinking, what would Tyson Fury do to Lucas Browne? I think Tyson Fury would humiliate him. I think it would last as long as Tyson Fury wanted it to. And I don't think Lucas Browne would be able to land a single punch on Tyson Fury. It'd be hard to see Lucas Browne being any more effective against a guy like Fury as Derek Chisora was. All of this talk about Lucas Browne wanting Deontay Wilder, Lucas Browne wanting Tyson Fury, Lucas Browne wanting Ruslan Chagaev. Right, these guys are operating at a far higher level than Lucas Browne. As I say, the best opponent that he's beaten is probably Richard Towers. Now Deontay Wilder's got a terrible resume, but he's beaten at least 3 or 4 opponents who you'd fancy over Richard Towers. For me, Lucas Browne, I'm afraid, if you're a gambler, if you're just someone who watches the sport and not likes to speculate on heavyweight prospects, for me, he's one to be nervous about backing. There are so many holes in his game. He's so unathletic. He's so basic. His punches were so easy to anticipate, so telegraphed, so slow. For me, when he steps up, he's going to get beaten. Right now, I pick Hughie Fury over him. I pick Anthony Joshua over him. I pick Joseph Parker over him. And you can pretty much say the whole of the top 20. Let me say this. Last night there was another fight which I'll discuss in a separate video. Steve Cunningham versus Antonio Tarver. Neither of those guys looked particularly exciting either. But right now, in a heartbeat, I'd have both of them over Lucas Browne. Steve Cunningham, the activity, the movement is just going to confuse, befuddle Lucas Browne. Antonio Tarver, the way he times his shots, the way he waits till the opponent makes mistakes, well, he wouldn't be waiting long against Lucas Browne. You see, Lucas Browne is an educated bouncer. Antonio Tarver is an educated boxer. I kind of spoiled the punchline there, but there we are. Let me know your thoughts. Let me know your thoughts on this fight. Let me know your thoughts on the future for Lucas Browne. I do appreciate not everyone's going to agree with my thoughts here. As I say, Dwyer's someone whose opinion I massively respect. I'm a huge fan of what he does, but one of the few areas that I disagree with him on. Thanks for watching. If you've enjoyed this, please give me a thumbs up.